The moment I stepped out of my car and looked toward the little lakeside cafe where my first date was waiting, I realized something was terribly wrong. She wasn't alone. Two women stood together near the entrance, both staring directly at me with expressions that couldn't have been more different. One looked nervous enough to run away, while the other folded her arms with quiet determination, as though she had been waiting for this exact moment for years. I hadn't even introduced myself yet, and somehow my simple first date had already become the most unexpected and emotional day of my life. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who could use a little encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us how powerful compassion can truly be. Gavin Mercer had spent most of his adult life believing that honesty was the safest path through every relationship. At 34, he worked as a restoration carpenter in a quiet coastal town in Oregon, bringing forgotten wooden homes back to life with patience and craftsmanship. He loved creating beauty from things that others considered broken. Friends often joked that Gavin could repair almost anything except his own loneliness. After ending a long relationship nearly 3 years earlier, he had buried himself in work, convincing himself that romance would happen when it was meant to. His closest friend finally persuaded him to create a dating profile, insisting that good people were still out there waiting to be found. After several weeks of awkward conversations and polite messages that led nowhere, Gavin met someone named Elise Rowan. Her profile was refreshingly sincere. Instead of glamorous photographs or exaggerated promises, she shared simple pictures of hiking trails, books, and homemade pies. She wrote that she valued family, honesty, and people who kept their word. Their conversations flowed naturally. They laughed about embarrassing childhood memories, exchanged favorite recipes, and discovered a shared love for restoring old furniture. After 2 weeks of talking every evening, they agreed to meet for lunch at a charming cafe overlooking a peaceful lake. Gavin arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked from his own garden that morning. He believed flowers from home meant more than expensive roses from a store. As he approached the entrance, he spotted Elise immediately, but standing beside her was another woman who looked remarkably similar. Their matching eyes and familiar smiles made it obvious they were sisters. Before Gavin could process the surprise, he noticed that the second woman wasn't smiling at all. She watched him carefully, almost as if she were trying to decide whether he deserved to be there. The introduction was polite but strangely tense. Elise explained that her older sister, Maren Rowan, had insisted on coming for just a few minutes before leaving. Gavin assumed she was simply being protective. After all, meeting strangers from the internet carried understandable risks. He appreciated a family that looked after one another. But instead of leaving, Maren quietly sat down with them, and the atmosphere became increasingly uncomfortable. Gavin noticed that Elise struggled to maintain eye contact while Maren occasionally glanced toward her sister with concern rather than judgment. Lunch had barely begun when the truth slowly emerged without anyone planning for it to happen. Gavin learned that Elise had spent the last 2 years caring for their father after he suffered a devastating stroke. During that same period, Maren had taken on 2 jobs to help cover medical expenses after their family's savings disappeared. Their father had recently passed away, leaving behind not only heartbreak but also overwhelming financial debt. The sisters had grown incredibly close through shared sacrifice, but grief had changed them in different ways. Elise had become hopeful, eager to rebuild her life. Maren had become cautious, convinced that happiness always came with hidden disappointment. What Gavin didn't know was that Maren had secretly looked through his online profile before encouraging Elise to meet him. She had searched public records, checked community pages, and even asked mutual acquaintances about his reputation. She wasn't trying to invade his privacy out of cruelty. She simply couldn't bear the thought of her younger sister trusting the wrong person after everything their family had already endured. As the conversation continued, Maren admitted something that surprised Gavin more than anything else. She confessed that she hadn't come to scare him away. She came because she wanted to see whether the man behind the friendly messages treated people with the same kindness he claimed to value. Without hesitation, Gavin stood up, assured the server that everything was fine, helped gather the broken pieces safely, and quietly asked another employee to bring cleaning towels. He even joked about how clumsy he had been as a teenager working in a bakery, making the embarrassed man smile through watery eyes. He refused replacement food until everyone else had been served, insisting that the staff should focus on customers whose meals had not yet arrived. Maren watched every second without saying a word. When lunch finally resumed, the conversation became warmer. Gavin never asked intrusive questions about the sisters' painful past. Instead, he listened carefully whenever they chose to share something. He spoke openly about his own mistakes, admitting that after his previous relationship ended, he had isolated himself from friends and convinced himself that trusting people again was pointless. Restoring old houses had taught him something unexpected. Damaged foundations could often be repaired if someone was patient enough to uncover what remained strong beneath the surface. He had eventually realized that people weren't so different. As the afternoon sunlight reflected across the lake, Maren quietly excused herself and walked outside. Elise looked embarrassed, apologizing for how unusual the day had become. Gavin simply smiled, saying that life rarely followed the plans people imagined. Sometimes unexpected moments revealed more truth than carefully organized ones. A few minutes later, Maren returned carrying 3 small paper cups of ice cream from a nearby stand. She placed one in front of Gavin before taking a slow breath. Although she never spoke dramatically, the emotion in her face revealed everything. She admitted that she had expected to find reasons why Elise should walk away. Instead, she found herself hoping her sister had finally met someone genuine. Over the following months, Gavin and Elise continued seeing each other, but something equally meaningful developed between Gavin and Maren. They never became best friends overnight. Trust doesn't grow that quickly. Instead, it developed through ordinary acts of consistency. Gavin helped repair loose railings around the sisters' aging home without charging them. Maren baked fresh bread whenever Gavin spent weekends helping with maintenance. They laughed together while sorting through old family photographs, honoring memories that grief had once made too painful to revisit. One autumn afternoon, the sisters invited Gavin to volunteer at a community workshop restoring donated furniture for families rebuilding their lives after natural disasters. Gavin immediately agreed. Working together reminded all 3 of something they desperately needed to remember. Broken things were not worthless. They simply required patient hands willing to see possibilities instead of imperfections. Months later, while delivering a restored dining table to a young widow raising 2 children alone, Gavin noticed tears filling Maren's eyes. She quietly admitted that for the first time since their father's illness began, she no longer felt responsible for protecting everyone all by herself. Watching someone consistently choose kindness had slowly convinced her that sharing life's burdens wasn't weakness. It was healing. Eventually, Gavin proposed to Elise during a bright spring afternoon picnic beneath flowering trees overlooking the same lake where their unusual first date had taken place. There were no expensive fireworks or extravagant surprises. Just homemade sandwiches, laughter, sunlight dancing across the water, and 2 sisters who had survived unimaginable hardship together. Elise accepted with joyful tears, while Maren smiled more freely than Gavin had ever seen before. Years later, friends still laughed whenever someone asked how Gavin and Elise first met. They would smile and explain that what was supposed to be one first date unexpectedly became a meeting with 2 sisters. Yet the greatest surprise wasn't that both sisters had been waiting. The greatest surprise was discovering that love sometimes arrives alongside responsibility, caution, healing, and family. Winning one person's heart occasionally means earning the trust of the people who have protected it through life's darkest seasons. Before this story comes to a close, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever met someone who completely changed your first impression through kindness rather than words? Please leave a meaningful comment sharing the lesson or experience that touched your heart, because your story might encourage someone else who needs hope today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. As the afternoon sun slowly settled lower across the peaceful lake, Gavin realized that the most important moments in life rarely happen according to perfect plans. Sometimes they begin with confusion instead of certainty, with unexpected people instead of expected ones, and with quiet acts of compassion instead of grand romantic gestures.